because of living cost and everything abroad, we might not be able to match what they do there, right?
Yeah.
But
True.
what the
True.
person is earning here should sufficiently still give sufficient headroom for the person even after all the expenses. So, for instance, if I want to say someone that's earning like say 5K in the UK, in the US, and then someone that's earning like 3K in Nigeria might end up having almost the same lifestyle
Okay.
because the basics of your monthly expenses and all
Yeah.
that might creep into your 5K the
Yeah.
same way that your 3K should. So first thing first is you can't say those companies should reward those skill sets if they don't have the financial strength.
Fair. Okay.
So the first thing is we need to develop our industries locally.
Yeah.
If those industries are developed locally to an extent where they can, to a big extent, right, considerably reward those skill sets, we have a chance to
Yeah.
retain them. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult.
So financial reward is one, but also the state of the economy, does that really impact the individual? I've spoken to my female colleagues in industry, and they're saying that look, the quality of education even in Nigeria does not motivate me to stay. So why
So,
should I stay when I can go abroad and educate my daughter or my son better, give them a better quality of life?
so that's a very tricky one to say. I agree with you, and I'm not going to shy with the reality of life, but I can tell you that it starts from, you know,
Yeah.
top.
So
It
yeah.
starts from concerted efforts from the government, because I wasn't born, but I heard that people come all over the world to come and study in Nigeria
In the past, yes.
in the past, right?
Yeah.
So what is stopping us? Because sometimes I don't blame, when people want to, go abroad for such, quest for better knowledge. Because when you sometimes you check the state of our infrastructure, the state of our, educational system, imagine student being out of school for 6, 7 months. What kind of lifestyle is that? It's a lot of struggle. But what I know for a fact, going back to our cybersecurity discussion,
Yeah.
is first we need to get to develop those industries, our local industries,
Yeah.
such that those industries are financially strong enough and stable to be able to reward those, skill sets.
Yeah.
That way, we stand a chance to
Yeah.
retain them. That's
Yeah.
number one. And then you can, it's just like Abraham Maslow theory of, needs. There are needs at every level of life. So an average individual that satisfy the basic needs, might be looking at, the need
Yeah.
after that level. So those industries will also tailor their, compensation and rewards
Yeah.
along the entire, gamut of that responsibility and
Yeah.
that, reward matrix. So not just about, salary, and that still speaks to the fact that well, some might want to do that. They want to do internship and do some kind of bonding.
Yeah.
So, meaning that I'm gonna train you,
Yeah.
but you're going to also have to provide a service for me for a certain number of years. That can also,
Help.
help to
Yeah.
retaining those
Yeah.
skill sets. And then along the line, the person realized that really I'm not doing so badly.
Yeah.
And uh, another way that I want to answer the question about having quest to acquire knowledge or skills or education outside the country is simple. You also don't want to play as a local champion. Like the last exam I told you about CSSP. CSSP is
Yeah.
predominantly US-based exams. I can practically quote all the US laws around data protection,
Yeah. Yeah.
around medical, around finance, because, so you are also encouraged
Yeah.
not to limit your capacity or your knowledge to,
Yeah. Yeah.
local
And, th-
framework
and and that's
framework.
also very good. It's also very good because nowadays West Africa, South Africa, East Africa have a growing or a booming fintech in industry, and these fintechs exchange data with international international companies. And that's where all these compliance laws you just mentioned and rules will play a role in you as a local person being able to understand those international compliance policies and how you make your own local company compliant with them. So, as rightly said, having that broader knowledge will be quite critical. Another point which you also mentioned was the career path. I believe for most African countries, or some of them, their central banks have policies that now position cybersecurity a bit higher up. Cybersecurity is no longer customer service. We are now
But
a bit, yeah, higher up. We're not
the
interfacing
serious business, and I
business.
don't want to jump into what you're saying.
Yeah,
One thing that we enjoy a lot in Nigeria is the adoption of
yeah,
cybersecurity by our regulator in the financial industry, which is the CBN.
yeah,
In fact, as a matter of fact, CBN has a cybersecurity framework, right?
yeah.
They are very sincerely on the financial side in Nigeria. The CBN is doing a lot.
I
I'm
think,
not. I can give it
yeah,
to them. They're doing a lot. Their
I,
framework that every financial
yeah,
industry must follow. It
yeah,
speaks into in a kind of resources, the level of competence that is required for whoever is going to be your CISO, the amount of even it's so good that if you are struggling with budget, CBN can help you.
good.
Right,
So
right. So
you mentioned
on the
some points here,
financial, yeah.
some points here, which I'll just jump in. CBN is doing well, but Bank of Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, they're also doing quite well as well. They're also making great strides in their own laws. But you also mentioned the qualification for each role. Can you please touch on that? For
So
example, I'm an aspiring cybersecurity professional. I want to be a CISO one day. What qualification do I have to think of or be be budgeting for so that I can get this certification?
so thing is, it's a journey, and that's what I try to tell people, right? It's not a sprint. It's a
Yeah,
journey that takes time. But for me, the best way I would advise is you need to grow into uh, the the responsibility and the roles.
yeah,
And I would like a situation where the individual should try and learn a lot, bit and bit in different spaces. Because by the time you get to that particular role, you're not coordinating or you're not responsible or you're not accountable to um, your organization on just a single sphere. You're responsible for the network security aspect. You're responsible for the web application aspect. You're responsible for almost everything that has to do with securing your information assets. So first thing first is a journey.
yeah,
It's a journey. It's not a sprint. So
yeah,
take time to learn at every stage of that growth and that development. Focused on learning it deeply. The way the framework places it, you just put it on a grade level.
okay,
And simply put, for you to get to an AGM grade level, you must have gone to at least between 15 to 20 years, decades.
yeah,
Right. So that is expected you have learned and grow. And then they also, in part of their framework, put some regulatory requirement for you to have some exams, qualifications. You must have CSIM or CISSP, that level too,
yeah,
because it's managerial. But to answer that question, my honest opinion is it's not a sprint.
yeah,
It's gradual, and the person should take time to learn exactly the rudiments and then grow and graduate into it and learn all those things because they could be very useful later.
yeah,
You won't have, one of your reporting lines speak to you about a particular topic and you're completely novice. It's
yeah,
a really risk because you're the last line that everybody look forward to.
yeah.
Right. So that's a way of answer
So
that.
talking about threats again. Now, to curb these threats, we will need resources, we will need skill sets. As a student, what would you recommend? What skill set would you recommend? No, think of in Nigeria as a country trying to build resources from the grassroots, what would you recommend? What training, what are the sources of training? What would you recommend so that we build a strong cybersecurity skill set with ethics so that we can actually defend against these threats?
So it's a very broad question to ask me. Now it's like saying I want to go into the field of medicine.
Yeah,
Do I want to be a surgeon? Do I want to be an ONG person? Do I want to be a pediatrician? Do I want to be an oncologist? There are so many fields of cybersecurity.
yeah,
It's an holistic, it's a big umbrella
yeah.
that have different fields and different, subsections. So first thing first is for the person to sit down and check out the gamut of, different subject
Domains. Yeah,
domains. Like, do I want to focus on, securing only the network side? Do I want to know more about web applications?
yeah,
Do I want to know about even as far as, the intersection of GRC risk and all that? So it's uh it's better to sit down first and say, out of these cybersecurity skill sets, which of these ones do I find most fascinating?
yeah,
Which one do I want to go into? Because the landscape is quite broad,
yeah.
and we will be fooling ourselves if you want to say, uh, in essence,
I want to master everything.
across board.
Yeah,
It's important for you to know, like for CSSP, you have 8 domains. You
yeah,
must know the entire domains because you're
yeah,
expected to be able to speak, to be expected to be able to understand the threat landscape and have, a inform some sort of informed decisions and,
yeah,
contributions along all the domains.
yeah,
But your specialty can't be among all along the eight.
yeah,
So, speaking to an aspiring student, I want to say to the student to sit down and try and, test each of the skill sets and
yeah,
see which one do you find most fascinating or find intriguing. Then you can develop and make that your primary.
yeah,
Why you still take time to learn about, at least to a very good, not be, it should have to be beyond foundation, a good understanding of other domains.
yeah.
Then you can start going from there. And for
Excellent.
me, I will
Yeah,
also say that because of, it's a dynamic environment, we have to be abreast as to what are the kind of threats that
yeah,
are common,
yeah,
as individuals or as organizations. So those threats
yeah,
should also form some kind of input in
yeah,
deciding or determining, what kind of skill set do you think would be very, very appropriate. Because
yeah.
motivating factor is first we want to keep the environment safe, and also I want to say to the person, you also need to look at, okay, which of this is in high demand.
Correct.
All right,
No, that's true. That's
it is
true.
really important.
Yeah. And which of these will be used in the future?
Yeah. So which of them has a future? It's like someone into photography and you still struggle to, do with all those agua film that we used to.
Yeah, yeah.
You're out of business.
A business. True.
You're out of business, true. So
Yeah.
you need to be
You,
able
you
to.
made a very good point when you said that they should sit down and look at which of the domains are of interest to them. Because as rightly said again, it's a journey. And it is the interest that will keep you on that journey.
Exactly. That's
Because
where you get your best.
exactly. So to any students listening, and as in Nigerians trying to build a society that has enough resources, I would say, as you said, look for domains that make you happy. A domain that you can read at 2 a.m. at night when everyone is sleeping
And you're
and you have that
enjoying
joy
it.
eh,
And you're
to
enjoying it.
and you are enjoying it. Yes. And you have a smile on your face.
I think I also want to add that there's a very important factor, which is mentorship.
Yeah.
Mentorship, trying to, and, thank God for, this great platform. They can actually identify people that, you've seen up there, try and establish, professional relationship with those persons, and then ask questions. Possible you can even go straight. I'd like to be mentored by you. Do you mind? Would you like to, provide me some guidance as to how best to make some life-changing decisions? What are your input? What will you think, for me to do in this certain life? So mentorship will also help greatly in ensuring that the person makes some right decisions. In addition to which one of those domains, which one of those soft skills, do the person find most intriguing and most interesting to take up as a career in life.
Looking at the fintech industry in Africa, what are the threats that you think are more applicable that the CISO should be aware of within that industry?
Sorry, come again, please. I didn't hear the question.
Looking at the fintech industry in
O-
Africa, what
Okay.
are the threats, the cybersecurity threats that you think are more applicable?
Oh, one of the best thing that happened to Africa as a continent, and I take pride in this as an African person, that the level of development, the level of solutions in the fintech space that's come out of Africa is enviable. Like
Yeah,
is so beautiful.
yeah,
But it's a funny thing that as much as you have such a beautiful, happening to the African continent, is almost in the same proportion introducing beautiful and huge amount of threats, because the threat landscape keep increasing by the day.
yeah,
I tell you this, right? Someone said the easiest thing to keep secret is what you don't say out. But you know about it. The next level is for you to keep it in the room and lock it up.
yeah,
But for you to have a global reach, you need to be on the internet.
yeah,
And as long as you're on the internet, you are global. Everybody have the same unrestricted, I mean in that word, access to your resources as people local to you. Someone can be in Russia, you know, trying to test out your your resources or whatever platform you have. And the challenge is, it's just funny. The advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning has really helped us to be able to do some things better. But it's the same way that the bad guys can use the same thing. Like if you want to do a target, brute force attack, you just need to pay a few dollars, and they will have botnets that will orchestrate and target, brute force attacks, whatever resources you want to do. So, answering your question, for fintech in Africa is around finance. One of the major things that you need to, for them to really, really protect, is first that asset, which is the figure, I mean the financial value,
mm,
because any breach that leads to financial loss is a major reputational damage.
yeah,
So, first, they should be very, very concerned about financial loss. And most times, I found out that financial loss happens along the line of your uh, platforms, like your mobile app, your internet, facing applications, maybe some weakness or some vulnerability in those applications that you publish on the internet. Someone find out that a particular, maybe encryption is not up to the notch, or
yeah,
maybe this particular website is subjected to maybe session hijack, or any of those 10 top 10 OAuth attack, and the
yeah,
person capitalize on that, they're able to gain unauthorized access into your supposed database, and they move funds. So first, that I will say is the most critical threat to fintechs is what is capable of financial loss, right?
okay,
Then you can also talk about ransom attacks. Those
yeah,
attacks are where they kind of attack those resources, and then kind of encrypt it, kind of take control of your data, and then asking for a ransom. before they release those data to you. Imagine they're able to compromise your entire database and you can't, it's a lot. So along the line of financial laws, ransom attack, insider threats is a major challenge too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to overlook social engineering too because it's
True.
very easy, right? And social engineering an individual insider gives, uh, ignorantly vital information that can be used by an attacker to gain unauthorized access and then move financial law. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a very big blow once there's a major, loss, especially along finance, because it's going to affect the reputation of such fintech. So my word to them is to ensure that whatever resources they are putting on the internet,
Yeah.
they ensure that is foolproof and then financial loss is prevented. There are best practices.
Yeah.
For instance, I mentioned, having anything on the internet, you obviously need to both have network protection, a network firewall,
Yeah.
and then you also need to have a web application protection,
Yeah.
a web
So
application firewall.
let me just talking about best practices. Now, do you think the fintech industry in Africa, since it's evolving, do we need special certification standards for that industry, or can we depend on the current best practice that has been there for years, or should
So
we change them, tone them to be Africanized? What do
so
you
I,
think?
w- I want to answer it this way, and it's um, in, very good question that you asked me. Your level of encryption that you used 10 years ago
Yeah,
that we find very efficient
yeah,
today is no longer efficient.
true, true.
In fact, there are recent developments around this the advent of this monster set of computing, these quantum computing devices,
Yeah,
right? Those guys can break most of the encryption that before now is considered foolproof. So that is speaking to the fact that as the digital economy, the fintech development is evolving, we
yeah,
have to constantly evolve because just like I mentioned, if we have computers with massive processing capability that can
yeah,
break some, either to save encryption. That means we need to start looking at quantum proof
yeah.
encryption.
Okay.
So,
So let me. So you believe that the fintech industry should deploy current certification standards? Am I correct in saying that?
yes, and it should not be static.
Good,
For
good.
instance,
Yeah,
let me even put, the basics of say you want to process card, right? You want to process card, you want to switch cards, do
yeah,
card transactions. One of the basic um, how do I put it, certification that you must, satisfy is PCI DSS. But it's not a lifetime certification. There's a
yeah.
cycle. They
Cycle.
go
Yeah, yeah,
back to state. You were certified maybe last year or 2 years
yeah,
ago. We need to revalidate that those, infrastructure and everything that you put in place. And they also revise those framework. They
yeah.
introduce new
True,
domains
true.
and
Yeah.
you introduce new yardsticks. Like
Okay.
CSSP I mentioned, they
Yeah,
just revised last year. They introduced more new domains because you can't say that, for instance, some 5 years ago, cloud wasn't so popular. 10 years ago, we're gradually, going into cloud. But now, every standard, every certification, everything that does not have cloud native security, you know, build from ground up needs a lot of revision. So
good.
we can't say it cannot be static and it won't be once in a lifetime. You have to be continuous and you have to be on a frequent and regular basis that will be agreed.
Excellent. So I have a couple of questions that have come up from the
Okay. Okay.
viewers. Basically, what do you think are the benefits of? AI and the risk.
So it's both blessing and curse. AI is doing wonderful in the space that is helping the way we learn, it's helping the way we can quickly upscale
Yeah,
because you know it's helping us getting solutions, answers to questions faster, and
yeah,
it's helping the way we do our work. In fact, with very little knowledge, you can put in questions on AI and then you're able to get the formatted information, sometimes very beneficial, that
yeah.
can help you learn, learn faster
Yeah.
than you would have done 20 years ago. But it's
Okay.
the same way. It's the same way, just like the example that I gave. For instance, some 10 years ago, if you want to do, when we started, some 15 years ago, when we started learning, using brute force attacks or attack password,
Yeah.
you need to sit down there and be passing those different dictionary attacks to those
Yeah.
passwords one that match. Now, if you consider you have botnet that will generate thousands and thousands of password dictionary
Yeah.
before say any
True.
password. So the
True.
same way that is helping us getting our learning platform, it's helping us
Yeah.
learn faster, it's helping acquiring information in a better way. It's
Yeah.
the same way that can be used negatively,
Yeah.
if I'm able to use that word, for the bad guys or the bad
Yeah.
actor, to with little or no information, use AI, and then you're able to do some very
Thank you. Thank you.
massive attack.
Yeah. My final question, which is a very common question that I've been asked personally as well, and most CISOs as well will be trying to figure this question, this answer out is how do you prove, how do you say to your management
Hmm.
that we need resources, we need resources to mitigate these threats? How do you propose that to your management?
Okay. Okay. So now it's a question that I wish you did not ask me because it's headache I've been facing. But this is the way I try to approach it. First thing is, for my information asset and also part of the CBN framework, you need to carry out a scheduled vulnerability assessment. So you hire top professionals to come and ethical hacking,
Yeah.
come and attempt to hack your resources.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they are close out meetings. You get your C levels to be there.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the person comes around and is able to see identifiable vulnerabilities and is able to show.
Yeah.
You know, I remember some very long time ago, we're trying to pitch, cybersecurity, information security to an individual. It was an airline. The person was like, "No, I don't need this and all that." And, all that. And okay, what I just did was okay. One of my very good friend, he did. It was the maturity was very low. They were able to play the session back, stop the session of transaction, and then change the response from 0 to 1. And there and there, we're able to buy tickets in his presence. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Showing this person the amount of damage that can be caused, he was able to, buy into the solution we're proposing. So, first thing first, the way I want to answer is I will get the report of my vulnerability assessment, and the closeout meeting, I will get the C levels guys to be there. Hearing it live, the potential damage that can be caused will help in getting those budget. That's number one.
Yeah.
And then the few, thankfully, the CBN regulatory in Nigeria makes some good, how do I put it, regulation around if you're breach,
Yeah.
you are you are mandated to report it. So if financial sector A has lost like 11 billion, and then the report of whatever happens, what needed to be done that wasn't done, you can show same to your. So bank A lost 11 billion because of this. If they have had this solution, they would have been able to prevent it. And it's not like joke, it's straight.
Yeah.
I need 100 million to be able to buy the solutions that can prevent us from losing the 11 billion and also having issues with reputation. So it's a very tough terrain to navigate. But Vulnerability assessment reports